I'm Jessica Wishers, and I teach at Belle Chase Academy, located on the Naval Air Station Base in Belle Chase, Louisiana. One of the things that I'm most passionate about is to be sure that I provide my students with the appropriate grade level, content, and background knowledge, as well as life experiences in order to help my students go on and continue to be successful. Today's lesson comes from Guidebooks, Unit 2, American Revolution. We're doing Lesson 20, Paul Revere, where we're focusing on multiple sources. One of our unit focus questions is, why do researchers use multiple sources? Students are also expected in this unit to be able to identify significant events and people of the time period. Today's lesson, you'll see a 4th grade classroom, full inclusion, where I have students with 504 plans, ESL, diverse learner, as well as regular education students. One of the most important content standards in ELA in 4th grade is the use of textual evidence. So you'll see my students citing multiple sources in their responses. Before we jump into the activity of analyzing the 3 different texts, I want us to take into consideration the 3 different texts that we have read about Paul Revere. And in your opinion, which word best describes Paul Revere? Would you say that he was smart, he was energetic, ambitious, accomplished, busy, or lucky? Okay, I'm going to give you a second. The words that we may not have covered yet is the word ambitious. Does anybody know what the word ambitious means? Okay, Charles? Zalia?
Maybe tries hard and has big goals.
Exactly right. It would go hand in hand with our habit 3, putting first things first. Remember before the holidays when we set goals, we had ambitions and we were ambitious. So, and then the word accomplished. What does the word accomplished mean? We can use our root word in order to help us. AD.
Successful.
Successful, like achieving a goal, accomplishing it, okay? And energetic, the base word, the root word. Jayla?
If you have a lot of energy.
A lot of energy. So out of these words, smart, energetic, ambitious, accomplished, busy, or lucky, which word do you think best describes Paul Revere? And you need to be able to support it with at least one piece of evidence from the 3 different texts. You know my favorite 4th grade standard of all time? Textual evidence, okay? So choose what word you think best describes Paul Revere and think of one piece of textual evidence to support your idea. Going to give you a couple moments to think. When you have that idea, I want you to put one hand on your head. Okay, waiting on a few kiddos. Okay. Let's turn and talk. Turn and talk with your partner, your shoulder partner. What word do you think best describes Paul Revere? So what did y'all decide? Energetic. And what happened in the text that made you think you were energetic?
I think it was those ways to get the message out.
Okay. Okay, what about you?
I'm saying smart because I think he's also messed up. And first he had to get, wherever he was trying to put the message, he had to get his friends, and then he had to get all the way to the road, and then he had to quickly get on the horse and ride all the way.
Okay. What about you two? Why don't you turn and talk with that group and see what they say?
What do you got? So we said accomplished.
Okay, my group over there, I want y'all to all get together, turn and talk, group to group, and see if you have any other ideas. Okay? So what were we saying? Describe what we were about. Okay.
So I said smart because
Okay, so smart to develop a plan. Okay, what about you, Brennan?
I said he was he has to go do the he forgot his claws and he wasn't
No, I think part of it is busy.
and he had to I also give my wife to
He has a lot of stuff to do, and
also he had to quit this
successful
to
because
he
he
had
does a lot of things good.
the horse and
Okay, so he had a lot of things going on at the same time. All right, okay, and what about you, Kyle?
Yeah.
What?
And he's also good because he has to let
So he definitely turned out to be fortunate and lucky because then he was able to fix his mistake that he made, right? Okay.
He's also kind of
Hakuna. All right, so what is it? What were some of the words that we chose to describe Paul Revere? Who wants to share out some of the conversations that we had in class? Zalia.
accomplished because he was able to warn all the townspeople before the soldiers came.
Okay, he was accomplished because he was able to warn all the townspeople before AD. The poem, you might have described him as being ambitious or accomplished. Remember, that was the text that we used the other day when we studied the figurative language, the spark that started the flame, and it painted the picture that Paul Revere was an American hero. And then in the last text that we used, the Liberty, one if by land, two if by sea, it focused more on the ideas of what was going on with the British and just a little bit of Paul Revere. We saw 3 different texts. All right. So, in each of those texts, were all of the events portrayed the exact same way? No. Okay. So, do the details of the events of Paul Revere's ride change in the various texts?
Yes.
Were all 3 texts exactly alike and told the same story?
No.
No. Why not? Why not? Why or how do we notice some of the changes between the various texts? Liam?
Because how we noticed that the change in the various texts was whenever the in Paul Revere's ride, it didn't talk about how he forgot the claws.
Okay. So in our second text, Paul Revere's ride, it didn't mention that he forgot anything, right? Okay. What's another example, Brennan?
I forgot what text it was.
Okay. Let's see if we can figure it out. Maybe somebody can help you.
In one of the texts, it talks about him he left the door open to his dog, and in Paul Revere's ride, it didn't talk about that.
Okay. Does anybody remember which text it was that told us about him accidentally leaving the door open? Sarah?
I think it might have been what happened to Paul Revere.
And then what happened, Paul Revere? And that one, it talked about him leaving the door open. But you mentioned that in the second text, the poem, it didn't mention anything about a dog, right? Were there any other examples throughout the various texts that we noticed a different portrayal or a different set of events that another story didn't touch on? Jayla.
That one of the texts, I forgot which one it was. Oh, I think it was Liberty.
Okay.
It said that one of his friends rode him across the Charles River.
Okay, one of his friends rode him across the Charles River. Does anybody remember the first text that we read, and then what happened, Paul Revere? How many people helped him out in that story? Luke?
2.
He had 2 friends ride him across. Not to mention, he needed the friend's friend, right? That was the lady with the petticoat. He needed his wife to help him out. He needed his dog to help him out, right? So in the first version, he needed a lot of help. In the second version, they didn't mention really getting any help. It just focused on him being an American hero, right? And he was basically the cause of the American Revolution. And in our third text, the one if I land, two if I see, it mentioned 1 friend. So we see all these varying accounts. So let's zoom back in, refocus on our unit focus question. Remember, one of our unit focus questions as we were doing our research project was, why do researchers use numerous sources? Why do they use various sources in order to complete their research? Why would it be important for us to read not 1, but 2 or 3 different accounts of Paul Revere's ride? Why don't you turn and talk with your shoulder partner? Why is it important, and why do researchers use numerous texts in order to learn about a subject?
So, some other texts information that the other
You have a different point of view. One might think, one might want to say, oh, he did all this himself.
Are you able to share that?
Get stuff, and then all the books that are related to it, you can get from the sources and some books
read the special events.
Okay. Class?
Yes.
All right, let's share out some of the things that you just talked about. As I walked around, I heard some really great conversations going on. AD, why don't you start us off?
So I agreed with Sarah, and she said that we could use more than 1 text to find more evidence or information about Paul.
Okay. Anybody else? Willie?
To find the special events.
Okay. To get more events, maybe one version missed out on something, and so a second one might see it in another light. Okay. Kyle?
If there are different points of views from the authors and story writers.
Oh, I love that one. Different points of view. Let's put our thinking. My students met our lesson objectives today, and I know this because I heard them use textual evidence when they were supporting their description of Paul Revere, and that hit the focus question of identifying significant people during this historical event. They also were able to achieve the objective of comparing and contrasting various texts about Paul Revere, noticing the similarities and differences. They really hit the unit focus of being able to identify why researchers use numerous texts in order to better understand a topic. Today's lesson, I would have loved to have done a little bit differently with the uptick in COVID cases currently. I've had to break my pods apart, but I really feel that my children rose to the occasion and were still able to work and have the conversations while maintaining the social distance. After the video ended, the conversation continued on, and then we completed a Do What graphic organizer. It's one of the modifications that I've made to the Tier 1 curriculum to help my students identify what it is that they need to be writing about. We continued on with creating a main idea sentence for our writing that